The subway tunnel stretched endlessly ahead, its flickering fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows on damp concrete walls. Lee Hoyle felt his stomach churn as he followed the five-person party deeper into the dungeon. Something felt fundamentally wrong about this entire situation, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Nam Chi-min, their self-appointed leader, moved with an unsettling confidence that seemed completely at odds with his reputation. Hoyol had heard whispers about Chi-min's mediocre abilities, yet here he was, striding forward as if he owned the place. The other party members shuffled nervously behind him, their weapons held with trembling hands. "This way," Chi-min called out, his voice carrying an odd resonance that made Hoyol's skin crawl. "The monsters are thickest down this corridor." Hoyol's alter ego, the aristocratic demon hunter Gronfell Claude Arpeus Romeo, observed the scene with detached interest. Claude's keen senses detected something the others missed, an oppressive aura that seemed to emanate from their leader himself. The party ventured deeper into the tunnel system, and Hoyle noticed how Chi-min consistently made poor tactical decisions. He split the group unnecessarily, sent weaker members ahead to scout dangerous areas, and ignored obvious ambush points. Any competent leader would have recognized these mistakes immediately. "You three, check that side passage," Chi-min ordered, pointing toward a dark alcove that practically screamed danger. "We'll secure this area." The designated scouts exchanged worried glances but complied. Within moments, inhuman shrieks echoed from the darkness, followed by the sound of claws against concrete. 3 low-level goblins emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with predatory hunger. Panic erupted instantly. The remaining party members froze in terror, their faces draining of color as primal fear overwhelmed their training. One dropped his sword entirely, backing against the wall with wide, terrified eyes. Another began hyperventilating, unable to draw his weapon. Hoyol felt the fear trying to grip his mind, but Claude's presence pushed it aside like smoke before wind. The aristocratic persona had faced far worse than mere goblins. What troubled him more was the source of this overwhelming terror. "Interesting," Claude murmured internally, his analytical mind dissecting the situation. "This level of fear is supernatural in origin." Chi-min stood amid the chaos, and for the first time his facade cracked. A cruel smile played across his lips as he watched his teammates struggle against the paralyzing dread. He made no move to help them, instead seeming to relish their suffering. The goblins advanced slowly, savoring the feast of fear, radiating from their prey. But something was wrong with this picture. Goblins were typically mindless in their aggression, yet these creatures moved with calculated precision, as if following orders. Claude's supernatural senses finally identified the source of wrongness. A dark presence lurked within Chi-min's body, feeding on the terror it had orchestrated. The entire dungeon expedition had been a trap designed to harvest human fear and despair. A possession, Claude realized, his aristocratic bearing never wavering despite the revelation. How delightfully crude. The demon within Chi-min turned its attention to Claude, expecting to see another terrified human. Instead, it met cold, calculating eyes that showed no trace of fear. The entity recoiled slightly, confused by this unexpected immunity. "You should be afraid," the demon spoke through Chi-min's mouth, its voice layered with unnatural harmonics. "I have orchestrated this perfectly. Your companions will die here, and their terror will nourish me." Claude adjusted his cuffs with practiced elegance, treating the demon's threats as little more than background noise. "Fear is a luxury I cannot afford. Unlike these commoners, I have standards to maintain." The possessed Chi-min snarled, commanding the goblins to attack. But Claude moved with fluid grace, his blade singing through the air. In 3 precise strikes, he eliminated the lesser monsters while simultaneously advancing on the true threat. "Impossible," the demon hissed. "You should be paralyzed with dread." "Your psychological manipulation techniques are embarrassingly primitive," Claude replied, his voice carrying aristocratic disdain. "Did you truly believe such amateur theatrics would affect someone of my caliber?" For the first time in centuries, the ancient demon experienced something foreign. Fear. Not the delicious terror it harvested from humans, but genuine uncertainty about its own survival. This human moved with supernatural confidence and skill that defied explanation. Claude's blade found its mark, not in Chi-Min's physical body, but in the spiritual essence that had infected him. The demon's true form materialized briefly, a writhing mass of shadow and malice, before Claude's precise strike severed its connection to the mortal realm. The entity shrieked as it was banished, its voice echoing through dimensions before fading to nothing. Chi-Min collapsed unconscious but breathing, the demonic presence completely purged from his system. The surviving party members slowly recovered from their supernatural terror, looking around in bewilderment. They had witnessed something beyond their understanding, yet couldn't quite process what had occurred. "The dungeon is secure," Claude announced with characteristic understatement, sheathing his weapon. "The threat has been neutralized." Internally, Hoyle marveled at what had just transpired. His mysterious alter ego had not only remained immune to demonic manipulation, but had actively combated a supernatural entity. The implications were staggering, yet Claude treated the entire incident as merely another day's work. As they prepared to exit the dungeon, Hoyle couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was just the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous. Back to our deep dive into the player who can't level up. In our first segment, we explored Lee Hoyle's frustrating journey as a perpetually weak player in the virtual reality game Arcana. But everything changed when fantasy became reality in the most unexpected way possible. To understand what happened next, we need to look at the world of Arcana itself. This wasn't just any ordinary game. Arcana was a fully immersive virtual reality experience where players could live entire second lives as powerful warriors, mages, and adventurers. For years, millions of people escaped into this digital realm, building characters and accumulating strength they could never achieve in real life. Then came the day that changed everything. Without warning or explanation, the boundaries between the virtual world and reality completely collapsed. The game world of Arcana didn't just crash or shut down. Instead, it merged with our physical world, bringing all its magic, monsters, and mechanics into existence. Gates appeared everywhere, leading to dungeons filled with creatures that were once just pixels on a screen. Magic became real, and most importantly, every player who had been logged in during the merge retained their in-game character's abilities and classes. This worldwide phenomenon turned ordinary people into warriors overnight. Accountants became powerful wizards, students transformed into legendary knights. The weak became strong, and society restructured itself around these newfound abilities. Everyone, it seemed, had won the ultimate lottery. Everyone except Lee Hoyle. When the merge occurred, Lee found himself trapped in perhaps the most unfortunate situation imaginable. Not only did he retain his pathetically weak stats from the game, but something far more disturbing happened. He lost complete control of his own body to his in-game character, Granfell Claude RPS Romeo. Now, Claude wasn't just any character. He was a demon hunter, and that designation came with massive complications. On paper, demon hunters sounded incredible. They possessed devastating abilities specifically designed to annihilate demonic creatures. Their skills could tear through hellish monsters that other classes struggled against. They were the ultimate specialists in combating supernatural evil. But here's the cruel irony that made Lee's situation so hopeless. While demon hunters excelled against demons, they were absolutely terrible at fighting everything else. Their abilities were so specialized that battling regular monsters, animals, or even other humans became nearly impossible. This meant that leveling up, which required defeating various creatures and completing diverse quests, was practically impossible for a demon hunter. The class had become virtually obsolete in Arcana. Most players who accidentally chose it either deleted their characters or found ways to change classes. It was considered a joke, a trap for newcomers who didn't understand the game's mechanics. The few players who stuck with Demon Hunter either quit in frustration or remained perpetually weak. But Claude wasn't just any demon hunter. His personality was that of an aristocratic noble with immense pride and an unshakable sense of superiority. Where Lee was hesitant and afraid, Claude was confident and ruthless. Where Lee wanted to avoid conflict and find safe ways to survive, Claude viewed such thinking as beneath his dignity. This created an impossible internal conflict. Lee's consciousness remained trapped inside his own body, watching helplessly as Claude made decisions that went against every survival instinct he possessed. Lee understood the reality of their situation. He knew they were weak, that picking fights was dangerous, and that caution was necessary for survival. But Claude's aristocratic mindset refused to acknowledge weakness or retreat from any challenge. The contrast between their personalities created constant internal tension. Lee would panic at the sight of dangerous monsters, knowing their limitations, while Claude would approach the same threats with casual disdain. Lee wanted to find other players to team up with, recognizing that cooperation was essential for someone so weak. Claude considered such alliances beneath his station and preferred to handle matters personally. This dual existence became Lee's new reality. He was simultaneously the observer and the observed, trapped inside his own body, while an arrogant noble controlled his every action. Every decision Claude made felt reckless to Lee, yet he had no power to intervene or change course. The situation was made worse by the fact that other players were rapidly growing stronger, while Lee remained stagnant. The merge had given everyone else incredible opportunities for advancement, but his combination of the Demon Hunter class and Claude's controlling personality seemed designed to keep him perpetually weak. Despite Lee's mounting frustration and fear, Claude remained undeterred. His pride wouldn't allow him to acknowledge their disadvantageous position or modify his approach to accommodate their limitations. With characteristic aristocratic confidence, Claude continued moving forward, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, completely ignoring Lee's internal protests about their hopeless situation. After defeating the demon that terrorized Akshan, Claude experiences something unprecedented. The experience points flood in like a raging river, pushing his level skyward at an alarming rate. What should have taken months of grinding happens in mere hours. Lee watches his character sheet update repeatedly, numbers climbing so fast they blur together. But something strange begins happening in Lee's real life. He finds himself waking up earlier, making his bed with military precision. His apartment, once cluttered with takeout containers and gaming equipment, starts becoming spotless. He catches himself straightening his posture when walking, speaking with more formality to his coworkers. The habits Claude exhibits in-game are bleeding into reality. At first, Lee fights these changes. He deliberately leaves dishes unwashed, forces himself to slouch, tries to maintain his old casual demeanor, but the compulsions grow stronger each day. During lunch breaks, he finds himself organizing his desk with obsessive attention to detail. His speech patterns shift toward Claude's formal aristocratic tone, even during casual conversations with friends. Meanwhile, Nam Chelman sits in his office analyzing player data streams. His screens display charts and graphs tracking unusual activity patterns. One player profile keeps triggering anomaly alerts. The progression rates seem impossible. The skill acquisition defies known game mechanics. Nam makes notes in his digital journal, flagging the account for continued observation without direct intervention. Lee decides to experiment with his character's rapid growth. He allocates stat points methodically, testing different distributions to understand Claude's potential. Strength, agility, intelligence. Each investment yields results far exceeding normal parameters. But when he places points into intelligence, something extraordinary happens. Claude begins demonstrating magical abilities without learning specific magic skills from NPCs or skill books. During a routine dungeon run, Lee watches an enemy mage cast a fire enchantment spell. Claude observes intently, then immediately replicates the enchantment perfectly on his own sword. The flames dance along the blade exactly as they did on the enemy's weapon. Lee stares at his screen in disbelief. He attempts the phenomenon again with different spells. Each time, Claude needs only a single viewing to understand and reproduce magical effects. Ice barriers, lightning bolts, healing auras, all become part of Claude's arsenal through observation alone. This shouldn't be possible, according to everything Lee knows about the game's systems. Research into Satisfy's magic system reveals crucial information Lee previously overlooked. Magic exists beyond the predetermined skill framework. While most players rely on learning specific spells through quests or trainers, true magical understanding allows for spell creation and modification. The game's designers built this system for advanced players, but few ever discover its existence because reaching the required intelligence threshold seems impossible. Claude's abnormal stat growth has unlocked this hidden potential. His intelligence ratings exceed what normal players achieve, even at maximum level. Lee realizes he's stumbled into game mechanics designed for theoretical scenarios, not actual player use. News of Claude's magical demonstrations spreads through player communities. Videos appear online showing his impossible spell replications. Comment sections fill with accusations of cheating, demands for investigation, theories about hidden game mechanics. Some players attempt to recreate Claude's feats, failing repeatedly despite following identical procedures. The attention reaches professional gaming analysts and major guild leaders. They begin dispatching scouts to observe Claude's activities discreetly. Screenshots and combat logs circulate through private channels. Everyone wants to understand how one player achieved what thousands of others cannot. Around this time, NPCs begin mentioning the Mage Tower in conversations with Claude. This mysterious organization supposedly governs magical knowledge and research within Satisfy's world. Their representatives possess authority over magical education and advancement. Rumors suggest they recruit exceptional magical talents for special purposes. Lee finds himself accepting Claude's influence rather than resisting it. The discipline and refinement feel surprisingly comfortable. His real-life productivity increases dramatically. Work projects that once took days now finish in hours. His apartment becomes a model of organization and cleanliness. Friends comment on his improved appearance and more confident demeanor. During this period of rapid development, game forums explode with speculation about upcoming content updates. Developer announcements hint at major demon-related events approaching. Screenshots leak, showing massive demonic armies gathering in remote regions. Players prepare for what promises to be Satisfy's largest update yet. Claude continues training, his magical abilities expanding daily. Each new spell observed becomes part of his growing arsenal. His reputation spreads beyond individual players to reach the attention of major gaming organizations. Everyone wants to understand the phenomenon he represents. The segment concludes with Lee receiving an unexpected in-game message. Official communication arrives bearing the Mage Tower seal, requesting Claude's presence for evaluation and potential recruitment. The timing seems deliberate, arriving just as rumors intensify about the approaching demon update that will shake Satisfy's world. The world held its breath as emergency broadcasts flickered across every screen, every phone, every digital billboard on the planet. Level 430. Count Oscura. Vampire Demon Lord. The numbers alone sent shockwaves through the global gaming community, but what truly terrified experts wasn't just the astronomical level, it was the blood-red notification that followed. Demon Authority. Blood Hierarchy. As subordinate vampires fall, remaining forces grow exponentially stronger. Current subordinate count. Unknown. Threat assessment. Extinction level. Nam Taman stared at his guild's war room display, watching real-time data streams pour in from intelligence networks worldwide. The Gaon Guild had faced impossible odds before, but this felt different. This felt final. Sir? Nam Chelman's voice cut through the tense silence, his analytical mind already processing the implications. We're seeing something unprecedented here. The Demon Authority system means every vampire we kill makes the survivors deadlier. It's not just about overwhelming force, it's mathematical impossibility. Across the globe, guild leaders reached the same horrifying conclusion. The Berserker Guild's Liani Bellalucci slammed her fist against a reinforced table, splitting it clean down the middle. Her legendary temper had carried her through countless battles, but rage meant nothing against exponential power scaling. We can't touch this thing, she snarled to her officers. Every move we make strengthens what remains. It's like fighting a hydra that grows stronger instead of growing more heads. Meanwhile, in his modest apartment, Lee Hoyle felt something shift within his consciousness. Not his own thoughts, but Claude's ancient awareness stirring with predatory interest. The notification had appeared differently for them. Not a warning, but an invitation. Quest available. Demon Hunter classification advancement. Target, Count Ascura, Blood Noble of the 13th Circle. Reward, unknown. Failure, penalty, irrelevant. Claude's aristocratic bearing seemed to intensify, his mental presence growing more pronounced as he analyzed the situation with centuries of supernatural knowledge. A blood noble, he murmured through Hoyle's lips, though no one was there to hear. How delightfully nostalgic. It has been quite some time since I encountered one of adequate breeding. The Mage Tower's response was swift and unprecedented. Portal gates materialized simultaneously across every major city on Earth, their crystalline surfaces humming with enough magical energy to power small nations. The message was clear. This threat required immediate, coordinated response from humanity's strongest forces. But as elite guilds began mobilizing toward Count Ascura's territory, a sprawling Gothic domain that had materialized in what was once rural Romania, something unexpected began happening. Advanced reconnaissance teams reported encounters with a lone figure cutting through vampire forces with surgical precision. Early footage was grainy, distant, but the efficiency was undeniable. While massive guild formations struggled against even the Count's lesser servants, this mysterious individual moved through enemy ranks like they were paper cutouts. No flashy techniques, no overwhelming displays of power, just perfect economical violence that left ash and silence in its wake. Global media descended on the region like vultures, their cameras capturing glimpses of epic battles erupting across the Count's expanded territory. Berserker guild forces clashed with blood-drunk vampire knights in violent spectacles that drew millions of viewers. Strategic Gaon Guild units attempted coordinated strikes against undead fortifications, their disciplined formations slowly grinding through layers of supernatural defense. But experienced viewers began noticing anomalies in the coverage. Cameras would track guild movements, then suddenly lose focus, operators claiming technical difficulties or inexplicable atmospheric distortion. When feeds resumed, vampire positions that should have taken hours to clear were already empty, leaving only faint traces of ash and the lingering scent of something indefinably aristocratic. Nam Chelman's analytical reports grew increasingly frustrated as patterns refused to emerge. "There's a variable we're missing," he insisted during emergency strategy sessions. "Something is eliminating targets faster than our models can account for. The math doesn't work." Lainey Bellalucci felt it first during a particularly brutal engagement with a vampire general. The air itself seemed to change, growing heavier, more oppressive. Her berserker instinct screamed warnings about an approaching predator, something far more dangerous than the undead filth she was currently dismembering. "What is that presence?" she growled, her enhanced senses detecting something that made her supernatural opponents seem like frightened children by comparison. International news networks struggled to explain the discrepancies between expected casualties and actual results. Military analysts brought in to assess the situation found themselves at a complete loss. Guild casualty reports didn't match observed battle intensities. Vampire force estimates kept shrinking without explanation. One particularly observant war correspondent noticed a trend in the chaos. Wherever the mysterious figure appeared, vampire morale collapsed entirely. Not just tactical retreat, but genuine supernatural terror. These creatures of the night, these blood-drinking predators that should fear nothing mortal, were fleeing in absolute panic from something that registered as barely human on their equipment. As elite guild forces established forward operating bases around Count Ascura's primary stronghold, long-range surveillance finally captured clear footage of their unknown ally. The figure appeared completely unremarkable at first glance. Average height, elegant but understated clothing, movements that suggested noble breeding rather than martial prowess. But experienced demon hunters recognized something in that casual confidence, that unhurried approach to overwhelming odds. This wasn't someone fighting desperately for survival. This was someone returning home after a long absence. Claude stepped through the Count's outer defenses like they were morning mist, his presence alone causing ancient magical barriers to simply dissolve. Behind him, the greatest military force humanity had ever assembled, prepared for the battle of their lives. Ahead lay Count Oscura's castle, and within it a confrontation 400 years in the making. The battlefield trembled as Claude raised his hand, and what happened next would haunt the memories of every witness present. Stone pillars erupted from the earth with surgical precision, each one calculated to maximum devastating effect. The terrain itself became his weapon as he manipulated the very ground beneath his enemies, turning solid earth into quicksand and raising protective barriers around allied forces. Jessie Hynesi, a high-level mage whose reputation spanned continents, watched in growing horror as Claude's magic defied every principle she understood. The spells required no incantations, no preparation, and most unnaturally, they consumed virtually no mana. Through her enhanced perception, she could see the impossible truth. Claude was using reverse magic, a theoretical concept that most scholars believed was pure fantasy. The elite guilds that moments before had faced certain annihilation found themselves suddenly protected by walls of stone and barriers of compressed air. Claude moved through the chaos with the calm efficiency of someone solving a mathematical equation rather than fighting for his life. Each gesture brought forth another impossibility: fire that burned cold, earth that flowed like water, and gravity that bent to his will. Nam Taman and Liani Belalucci, leaders of two of the most powerful guilds in existence, exchanged glances of recognition and fear. They had survived this long by understanding power dynamics, by knowing when they faced something beyond their capabilities. What they witnessed from Claude transcended mere strength. It was a fundamental rewriting of magical law itself. The media drones circling overhead captured every moment, broadcasting the impossible scenes to a global audience. Across the world, viewers watched their screens in stunned silence as this unknown figure single-handedly shifted the tide of a battle that had seemed hopeless. Social media exploded with theories, speculation, and growing panic about who this mysterious mage truly was. Lee Hoyle observed the spectacle with his characteristic detachment, noting how Claude's presence had transformed not just the immediate battlefield, but the psychological landscape of everyone present. The other fighters, both ally and enemy, moved differently now, some with hope, others with paralyzing fear, all with the awareness that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Jessie stepped forward as the immediate threat subsided, her analytical mind racing to comprehend what she had witnessed. She approached Claude with the cautious respect one might show to a natural disaster, given human form. Her questions about his techniques and training were met with polite but firm silence, as if she were asking about the private thoughts of a mountain. Representatives from major guilds began converging on Claude's position before the dust had even settled. Nam Taman offered immediate leadership positions, unprecedented compensation packages, and access to resources that most mages could only dream of. Liani presented proposals for strategic partnerships that would reshape the global magical community's power structure. Claude listened to each offer with the same courteous attention he might give to someone reading the weather forecast. His rejections were not dismissive or arrogant. They carried the quiet finality of someone who existed on an entirely different plane of concern. The wealth, status, and influence they offered held no more appeal than offering gold to the ocean. The global media pressed closer, demanding interviews, explanations, some insight into the mind behind such overwhelming power. Claude declined each request with the same polite disinterest, treating celebrity as if it were a mild inconvenience rather than the life-changing opportunity most would consider it. As quietly as he had entered the battle, Claude began to withdraw from the battlefield. No dramatic exit, no final statements. He simply walked away with the same understated confidence that had marked his every action. The assembled crowd of mages, guild leaders, and journalists could only watch as their potential savior or greatest threat disappeared into the distance. The world collectively held its breath as the implications settled in. Military analysts began revising threat assessments, magical academies questioned fundamental theories, and governments quietly initiated protocols for managing anomalous individuals. The footage of Claude's display would be analyzed frame by frame, but no amount of study would reveal the source of his impossible abilities. Jessie remained on the battlefield long after others had departed, staring at the transformed landscape that bore witness to magic that shouldn't exist. In her decades of experience, she had seen prodigies, geniuses, and legendary figures, but Claude represented something different, something that suggested the rules themselves were changing. The defeated enemies had retreated or been eliminated, but their final transmissions hinted at darker forces yet to come. Ancient demons stirring in forgotten realms, gods taking notice of mortal affairs, and disasters that would make today's battle seem like a minor skirmish. The world had gained a mysterious protector, but it had also announced itself to entities that preferred humanity to remain weak and divided. As night fell over the battlefield, one truth became undeniably clear. The age of predictable magic had ended, and whatever came next would be shaped by the quiet figure who had just walked away from legend itself.